Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to our 7th and final talk in our Severn series this evening. My name is Steph and I'm the events officer on the Unlocking the Severn project, and our talk this evening will be delivered by Rachel, who is the volunteering officer. She is going to tell us all about citizen science, what it is, how we're using it in Unlocking the Severn, and how you can get involved in citizen science as well, whether you live near the River Severn or live a bit further away. So the event this evening is brought to you by the Unlocking the Severn project, which is a conservation and river engagement project for people and wildlife. Unlocking the Severn is providing fish passage around 6 barriers on the River Severn and its tributary, the River Team. And this will restore 158 miles of river habitat and benefit a whole host of important fish species, including the shad, which you'll hear a bit more about later on. We also have a really exciting range of activities for people of all ages, interests and backgrounds, so that more people can get involved in the UK's longest river. And the project is being delivered by the partners that you can see along the bottom of my screen. So that is the Canal River Trust, Severn Rivers Trust, the Environment Agency, and Natural England. And it's all made possible through funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the EU LIFE programme. And you'll see that we're also joined on screen this evening by Laura, who is a British Sign Language interpreter, and she will be present throughout. And please be mindful that this is a live talk, and so it's a live interpretation, not a direct translation. So quickly, before I hand over to Rachel, I'll just run through a few pieces of housekeeping, and then we'll get started. The webinar is being recorded this evening, and we're hoping to make it accessible on the Unlocking the Severn YouTube channel within the next week or so. The webinar should last approximately an hour, so we'll have a presentation followed by some time for questions afterwards. So if you would like to ask a question, please feel free to submit this through the Q&A box, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen on that control panel. And we'll answer as many questions as we can after the talk. You're also welcome to use the chat box throughout, which is also located along that control bar at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to say hello in there, let us know where you're joining from. I'll be monitoring that if you have any technical questions and posting a few links in there for you as well. And when you do send a message, please make sure you send it to all attendees so that everybody can see any question or comment that you're making. So during the screen sharing, you should be able to see the presentation on one side of your screen and the speakers and Laura on the right-hand side. But if this isn't the case for you and you would like to make use of the British Sign Language, please follow these instructions, which I will also paste into the chat box for your reference in just a moment. So you'll need to click on the View Options button in the top center of your screen, and then click on the side-by-side mode option in the drop-down menu, and you'll see a tick once that is selected. So now all of that's done, without further ado, I will hand over to Rachel, the Unlocking the Severn Volunteering Officer, to tell us how citizen science is unlocking the River Severn.
Thanks, Steph. I'm just going to share my screen. If you just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so can you see that full screen now?
Yeah, we can. Thanks, Rachel.
Perfect. So as Steph said, I'm Rachel and I'm the volunteering officer for the project. And I'm going to tell you a little bit tonight about citizen science and how we're using it to unlock the River Severn. So to start, I'd just like to tell you what citizen science is, in case anyone doesn't know. So citizen science is defined as public participation and collaboration in scientific research. And what this means basically is it's volunteers, members of the public, getting involved and helping scientists to conduct research. And this can be done through a variety of ways, working with institutions, organisations, or in our case, charities. So why is citizen science important? Well, it's a case of many hands make a light workload. So by working together with volunteers, scientists and conservationists can collect much more information than they could if they were working alone. There's two main types of citizen science that we refer to: observation and processing. So observation is exactly how it sounds. It is observing and recording what you see and making sure you submit the data. So for example, you can have a casual observation, which may be that you're out on a walk and you see a plant and you might wish to record that, and you might do so through an app such as iRecord. Or you can have a set survey where you, for example, if you were a survey for butterfly conservation, you might have a transect to do. And so you would walk a set route, follow a set method, and record your observations along the way, making sure you submit your data afterwards. Processing is a slightly different type of citizen science. So processing is working with a pre-existing data, such as camera trap photos. And the idea with processing is that you work through the data and log what you find. Camera traps are a really great example of this. So a camera trap project could be done anywhere in the world, and those photos could be submitted online for citizen scientists to come and process, which really cuts down on workload. And a website called Zooniverse is a really good one to look at for examples of processing opportunities. So why do people take part in citizen science? Well, the first reason is because it's fun. You often get to do things you wouldn't normally do, maybe look at species or go to places that you wouldn't normally go to. And it can be really interesting. Secondly, it creates an opportunity to help make a difference, and it can help people to feel like they're giving something back, which is really important for well-being and for making us feel good. It can be a great way to learn about the natural world, and some citizen science projects are able to offer training for their volunteers. This can be great for anyone looking to continue their professional development, or it can be really handy for students that are looking to gain some work experience. Another great thing about citizen science is that lots of projects ask for a low level of commitment. This means it's ideal for busy people, and for people who can't really take part in traditional types of volunteering. It can be really flexible. So citizen science in the UK is big, and there's many different projects, and some of which you will have heard of. So one of the best examples to use is the Big Garden Birdwatch, hosted by the RSPB. And this happens every year, and thousands of people join in from all over the country. Another one that I particularly like is the Great Nurdle Hunt. And this is a partnership project that asks people to walk along beaches, collecting and counting nurdles and submitting their results. And for anyone that doesn't know, nurdles are tiny little balls of plastic that we use to make plastic products. And there's lots of them that end up in our waterways. So citizen science is meant to be accessible for everybody. Citizen science projects are designed with the public in mind, not with scientists in mind. So we try and make it really easy and user-friendly. And a lot of citizen science projects try and make the data entry easy, because that's the thing that's maybe the least interesting part of the role. So for data entry, projects do it in many different ways. Some still do it through paper copies. So you can record on a paper recording sheet and then either post it in or maybe take a photo and send it in. But some other projects have gone a little bit more technical. So on this slide, you can see 3 boxes. So the first one is the apps box, and this is a screenshot of the iRecord app. And this is a really user-friendly way of getting people to submit their data and their records. Most people have got phones these days, at least in the UK. So it's really easy to pull out your phone, check the app and submit data. Some companies, charities, organisations use their own websites to host the data entry forms. So for example, the Mammal Society, on their website, they have a species recording form, and you can just head over to the website and enter your data there. And then some companies or organisations use third-party websites specifically designed for data collection to host their entry forms. So iRecord is one of these websites that is designed for data collection, and there are many, many surveys that put recording forms onto iRecord to make them easily accessible. And the example I've used is the UK Ladybird scheme. So if you wanted to submit a ladybird record, you'd do it on that specific form in iRecord. So it might sound a little bit complicated, but each project will have very clear guidance on how to submit data, and they do try to make it as easy as possible. So bringing it home a little bit, citizen science on the River Severn itself, there's many, many projects. I've just named a few on this slide. The main example I wanted to share is the River Health Checker app, which is hosted by Shropshire Wildlife Trust. And this is a fantastic app that you can use on your daily walks as you're passing the river. And it allows you to submit a variety of data to the Wildlife Trust so they can keep up to date with what's happening on the river. So for example, it allows you to submit data regarding pollution. So if you notice a pollution event, or if you notice fly tipping, possibly if you notice an invasive species, you can log that on the app. And then it's also got a nicer side where if you see a species of particular interest, particularly to rivers, such as otter or kingfisher, you can also log that. And another one I want to shout out is the Army Riverfly scheme. So this is a scheme hosted by the Riverfly Partnership, and it enables citizen scientists to get involved with aquatic invertebrate sampling. And through the scheme, you attend a training day where you're taught to identify a few aquatic invertebrates, and then you're issued with a kit and you go out and survey on your own time. And that's just a really lovely one to get involved with. But obviously today we're here to talk about unlocking the Severn. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about unlocking the Severn and about how we use citizen science in our project. So as Steph said, unlocking the Severn is a conservation and river engagement project for people and wildlife. And the aim of the project is to restore connectivity on the River Severn, which is the UK's longest river. We're going to achieve this by installing fish passes at the main barriers to migratory fish on the Severn. And these main barriers are Diglis Weir, Beverley Weir, Holt Weir and Lincoln Weir. So the fish passes are either finished in the case of Beverley and very nearly Diglis, and in the process at Lincoln and Holt. And previously on the project, we also completed partial weir removals at Powick and Knightwick weirs on the River Team. So we're very busy, and all this work is aiming to restore connectivity on the River Severn. So we use citizen scientists a lot in our project. We love citizen science and we love working with volunteers doing a variety of interesting roles. So the main thing we do is fish counting, and we do this in Tewkesbury in spring and salmon in Ludlow in autumn. And this is to monitor either the shad migration or the salmon migration. We also do many, many other surveys. So previously we've worked with a local crayfish group to conduct crayfish surveys. My predecessor, Tim Thorpe, did some work with volunteers on freshwater pearl mussels. We've done eel monitoring, spawning monitoring, lots of different things. And it's just really interesting, and it's a fantastic way to engage with people. As I said, the main form of citizen science that we focus on is fish counting. And the reason for this is because our project predominantly aims to restore the river for migratory fish. And there's one very special fish that we talk a lot about, and that is the shad. So the shad you can see on this slide, a twait shad, and the shad, it's a member of the herring family, and we've got two species that live in the Severn, the Thwaite shad and the Alice shad. Now, we tend to talk a lot more about the Thwaite shad through our project, and that is because the Alice shad is very rare, and we're more likely to see Thwaite shad, and the numbers are higher, so we focus on the Thwaite shad. So these fish, they live out at sea, but they return to fresh water every year to spawn, and typically they do this in April or May, and that's why they have this beautiful name of the Mayfish. So historically, their numbers were much greater on the Severn than currently, and I'll just tell you a little bit about why. So in 1842, the Severn Navigation Act was passed, and this meant a series of locks and weirs were built between Gloucester and Stourport to aid navigation and allow deeper draft boats further upstream. This was fantastic for people and for trade and for navigation, but unfortunately it wasn't very good for the migratory fish that relied on the River Severn to give them access to their spawning grounds. Weirs are huge structures, and they just create such a huge barrier, especially to a tiny little fish that is trying to get upstream. Shad, unfortunately, are not strong enough to jump or leap over barriers, unlike salmon, which can leap. And what this meant was that the weirs caused a huge problem for shad, and very, very quickly after the weirs were installed, shad numbers declined dramatically. So on this slide, you can see two maps. So if we look at the map with lots of lines on first, which is on the left of my screen, you'll see that it's got a light blue line and a dark blue line. And on each of those lines is a red mark. That red mark represents the historical range of the shad. That's how far the shad used to be able to get up these rivers. So the light blue line is the River Severn, and shad could get as far up just past Shrewsbury. And the dark blue line represents the Team, and shad could get up as far as Ashford. Unfortunately, now they are severely restricted to the lower Severn, and they cannot get past Worcester, past Diglis Weir, which is a very, very big weir, and it's just impassable for shad unless the river's in a really high flood, which is unlikely at the time of year they migrate. On the right hand side for me, there's the pink and blue map, and that just shows again it's a bit of a zoomed in version, so you can see Upper Lode Weir at the bottom, which is the last weir that shad can pass, and then Diglis Weir as the next one along. So we are lucky that shad numbers have managed to survive on the Severn, and this is because of Upper Lode Weir, which I just mentioned, that shad can pass. This is quite a sizable weir, and it would have caused more problems for shad than it does, but luckily there's a notch cut into this weir, and this notch changes the water flow as it goes over and makes it easier for shad to pass. So we're really thankful for the notch at Upper Lode, because it means that shad are still able to cross over and maintain themselves in the lower Severn. So why do we need citizen scientists? Well, each spring, as the shad migrate up the Severn, we need to monitor their numbers. It's really important for the project to be able to monitor numbers year on year to see if the work we had done, if these epic engineers, fish passes, are having an effect. So each year we calculate a run estimate, and the hope is that as the years continue post-project, the numbers of shad will keep increasing, and this run estimate will get bigger each year. So in spring, we ask volunteers to head down to Tewkesbury and help us count fish as they migrate over that notch at Tewkesbury. This work is coupled with a camera that also gets set up at the notch in Tewkesbury, and that data gets put online so volunteers can help from afar, remotely. And you might ask why we have volunteers going in person and a camera all recording the same thing. And the reason for that is because we can't have volunteers at the notch every second of every day. There's not enough people, there's not enough time. So the camera is there to count the times when volunteers can't be there. And although often we'll have volunteers and the camera there at the same time, it's really useful to have that real-time data from people to validate what the camera's catching, because the camera isn't 100% accurate. There'll be issues of angles where fish get lost and not detected. So that's the main fish counting. But we also need to know where they spawn. And this is because when the barriers were put in, shad were cut off from their historical spawning grounds. So it's really important for us to know how they adapted to that and where they're spawning now, and for us to monitor that change each year now as the river becomes reconnected. We want to know where they're spawning now. Are they immediately going to head back to their historical spawning grounds when they get chance, or is it going to take more time? Are they going to find new spawning grounds on the way? What's going to happen? So it's fantastic that we can monitor that, and we do that by having volunteers join us at the river late at night. The spawning counts start at 10 p.m. and we sit and we listen. The spawning counts are also backed up with acoustic data, but again, it takes a combination of both methods for us to get an accurate record. So as I said, this information is going to help us monitor this information is going to help us to monitor the success of the project, and we'll learn a lot more about shad and their behaviour in the process. So if you would like to get involved, you can get involved remotely by going to our website and volunteering online by counting fish. And Steph is going to post a link to this in the chat. On the website, we have everything you need to know about counting shad, and our migration is due to start very soon. And each week throughout the migration, new videos will be coming up. So although it's not an instant real-time count, you're counting fairly soon after the fish have gone past, and it's really important for us. And when you finally see a fish on camera, it's really exciting for you. So on this slide, this is just a bit of a sneak preview of seeing shad go over the pass. Shad are a beautiful fish, and they have a lovely forked tail. And every now and again, you can see that really clearly on camera, and it's fantastic to watch them. Occasionally you do get other species on the camera as well. So on this slide, we've got a sea lamprey and a salmon. And you can see immediately how different they look from a shad, because the salmon is ginormous and the sea lamprey obviously has that sucker shaped mouth. So if you wanted to get involved but in the field and face to face, then we do need citizen scientists for helping with the fish count in Tewkesbury and for helping with spawning counts both in Tewkesbury and Worcester. And later in the year, once the migration is finished, we'll also be recruiting citizen scientists for riverfly surveys and some salmon counting in the autumn. And to keep up to date with that, you can go to the volunteering section on our website, which Steph is going to post a link to now. And this is just an image of where we count the fish in Tewkesbury, just to try and encourage you to get involved. So as you can see, it's a beautiful spot on the river. And what we have been able to do is install some boards over the notch on the weir, so that when the fish are going past you, you can see them really clearly. And it's a beautiful time. It's a beautiful spot to just while away the time and enjoy being in nature. The last thing I've got to show you is a video of shad spawning. Unfortunately, I don't have the sound to share with you, but I am able to share this video. And this is a teaser, I guess, of what the citizen scientists are looking for when they go out on those nighttime counts. And these nighttime counts take place between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. So it's a really unique experience. It's a really unusual time to be sat at the river. And when you see them spawn, it's quite magical. So let me just play this video for you. So you can see the lines of splashing along the water, and that is the fish chasing each other, trying to find a mate. And in a second, you'll see some footage of a circular pattern being created on the water. And this is the actual spawning event taking place. So this is when a male and a female fish have come together and decided to mate. So if you look into the top corner now, you should be able to see that circular motion being formed. It's quite distinctive, and at the time of year that a shad spawn, there's nothing else on the river that will make a ripple on the water like this. There we go. The spawning typically lasts around 3 seconds, so it's blink and you'll miss it. But luckily it is very noisy. So although we couldn't hear it on the video, I would suggest you look at some of the videos of shad on YouTube, because it really is quite amazing. And this is just the last shout out. So if you are local and you do want to get involved, we are running training sessions for people wanting to count fish in Tewkesbury over the next 2 weeks. And for anyone interested in spawning counts, we are holding an information session tomorrow, and we'll also hold one later in April. And all of our training sessions can be booked on Eventbrite, and Steph is now going to share a link if you do wish to join us for a training session. And that's it. So thank you all for listening to me tonight. I'm sure Steph will share any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
That was great. Thanks, Rachel. Good to hear about all the different projects across the UK, but yeah, particularly what we're doing on the River Severn, and some exciting ways that people can get involved as well. Feel free to submit questions via that Q&A box. If you have any. We haven't had any questions through yet, but we'll see if you've got any within the next few minutes. I have got a few though, Rachel. So to get involved in any of the volunteering activities, do people need any prior experience, sort of any qualifications needed, or is it okay to come along as a complete beginner?
You absolutely do not need any previous experience. We offer full training. So if you have never done anything like this before, that's not a problem at all. We'll show you exactly what you need to do. And yeah, it's great fun. If you haven't done a fish counting survey before, I'd highly recommend giving it a go. But I am biased.
No, I remember seeing my first shad going over that notch at Tewkesbury Weir last year, and it really was quite magical. Just they're such strong swimmers, aren't they, determined to get over that weir. It was yeah, it was really great to see them kind of persevering and getting over the notch. Sort of on the question of last year, was any data able to be collected last year? I know sort of lockdown started obviously just before our kind of key season, or is this year sort of really important for us to sort of get back and collecting more data again?
Yeah, it was a tricky one last year. We pretty much went into lockdown just before the migration run, and we didn't come out of lockdown until afterwards. We were really lucky though that we had 4 of our very dedicated citizen scientists who lived locally, and they were able to combine their daily exercise with a stop by the notch. So we were able to collect some data. So we have a data set for Tewkesbury and a run estimate for Tewkesbury from 2017 up until 2020, and we'll collect data this year. It is a really important year for the project, partly because we did miss a lot of the planned work last year, especially in terms of tagging fish. Tagging fish requires 2 people to be very close together, and unfortunately, due to restrictions last year, we weren't able to tag the 100 fish that we had planned, but there are plans to do that again this year. So it really is a case of trying to make up for lost time. But yeah, it's one of those things. Sometimes data sets have a gap in them, and you can do some really great things with statistical analysis now to compensate for that.
Brilliant, thanks Rachel. Had a question through from John, who has asked, is it possible to say how long the training takes? And after doing the training, are you then assessed for having reached a required level of competency?
The training session takes an hour, and typically the main reason we ask people to attend training is because we need to show them the site, we need to go through health and safety, and we need to make sure that they understand the survey method. It's a very simple survey to do, but coming along and meeting us and listening to us is really useful. At the training session, we can also provide you with a training pack, which has all the information for you to take home with you. And we're also able to provide you with some equipment that you need for doing the Shad counts, which involves a clicker counter for when you get hundreds going past at once and it's too many to count, and polarized glasses, which really help with being able to see the fish in the water.
Brilliant, thanks Rachel. And the surveys themselves take 20 minutes, is that right? For the
minimum time that you can survey is 20 minutes, and the maximum time you can survey is 60 minutes. Typically, I recommend to volunteers to do about half an hour. If you're seeing fish, half an hour will feel like 2 minutes, but if you don't see a fish, half an hour might feel more like 2 hours. So yeah, it's pretty flexible as long as you do at least 20 minutes. And once you've attended the 1 hour training session, you're then fully prepared. So whenever it suits you, you can go down and count fish.
Brilliant, thank you. It's a lovely walk over the ham to the weir as well. So it's quite nice to combine it with a walk and then sort of sitting by the river watching the fish as well. I really recommend it. So we've had another question from an attendee who's said they're not local, but they are working on some citizen science projects in their area. So it's more of a practical question. They're asking sort of, they've had some barriers relating to insurance and liability and life jackets and people going out on their own. So if you're able to tell anything about your approach now, then that would be great. But if not, then it's something we can do afterwards via direct message. But I know you've particularly thought a lot this year about how you can do it for COVID, haven't you, Rachel?
Yes, health and safety is at the forefront of all of our volunteering activities. We want volunteers to come out and have an enjoyable experience, and part of that is making sure that they're safe. So in terms of insurance, I don't actually handle the insurance myself. That is done by the trust that I work for, the Severn Rivers Trust, or depending on what volunteer role, it's done by Canal River Trust, because we have volunteers from both of our project partners. But in terms of practicality for people going out alone, we insist on in-person training for all of our new volunteers, and at that training they're given a full risk assessment. Once they've had this, they're then trained, if we feel they're competent, to go out alone. You mentioned life jackets, and because of the distance from the water's edge, life jackets aren't deemed necessary because it's more than 2 meters. And it's a case of every organisation does it differently, really. At the end of the day, if you're working in a public space where people generally go walking, to risk assess that as too dangerous for somebody to go and do a survey, it's an interesting situation, because if people are going there on their daily walks, generally the paths will be well maintained, the site will be relatively safe. Most public sites have a site safety check done on a monthly basis to make sure there's no major hazards for members of the public. So it's a combination really. And in terms of working through the pandemic and working through the challenges of COVID, we've done a lot of review of our risk assessments, and we're constantly updating our measures based on the government guidance.
Great, thanks Rachel. I hope that's answered that question for you, Sharon. Another question that we've had in, sort of not related to citizen science, and I'm happy to answer this one, or Rachel, if you can, asking when the viewing panel, I think it's the viewing gallery at Diglis, when that will be finished. Did you want me to?
Yeah,
yeah.
I
yeah, you've got your head in the sort of in Tewkesbury mode. Yep. So the fish pass at Diglis, which is the largest fish pass we're building, for those of you who don't know, it does feature, because it's finished now, a unique underwater river viewing gallery, which will allow scientists to monitor fish passing through the fish pass, and again contribute really valuable data that will help us with our estimates of the Shad run. This gallery will also be open for tours for members of the public to take part in. So keep an eye out on our website for updates on when that is being opened. There will be some kind of trial sessions that we're running this year, but then by next year's Shad run, it will be kind of fully up and running as a visitor experience. So watch this space, perhaps later on this year as well. But yeah, do keep an eye on our website and our social media as well for when you can come and visit the Diglis viewing gallery, because that will be a really unique experience. Brilliant. I see we had another question come in. Yeah, I can see you're asking about that one, Rachel, about kick sampling on the
Little Avon. Yeah, I've just queried what BART, it's an acronym, so I'm just wondering what it means, because I've not come across it. The kick sampling that we do with volunteers is the Army river fly sampling. So volunteers get trained to, there we go. So it's the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust. So in answer to the question, I would say if you are sampling for the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust, then it's those that you need to send your data to. We're the Severn Rivers Trust. So there's lots of rivers trusts, often they link up, but if you're volunteering for a specific trust, then they'll want the data.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel.
There's another question in the chat.
See, I'm looking in the wrong place. Yep, so another question then, whether it's possible to choose to volunteer in a specific area. So for some people on this call, you might not be local to Tewkesbury, so it might be more difficult to get to, but do we have any volunteering opportunities near the river and near Diglis in Worcester?
Yeah, so we have many different opportunities, specifically related to the Shad. The only opportunities we have in Worcester this year are the spawning camps. So we've got 2 locations in Worcester that will be monitoring for spawning behaviour. So if you fancy an evening by the river, then certainly get in touch. Thinking wider than Shad and some of the other volunteering we do have some practical volunteering in the Diglis area, and our riverfly volunteers can choose whatever site they want to monitor. So there's flexibility there as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, plenty to get involved with Unlocking the Severn. So do go and have a look on our website at the volunteering opportunities. Everything will be updated on there as we start doing more and more, you know, as COVID restrictions ease, and kind of different opportunities throughout the year as well. As Rachel said, there'll be more later on in the year related to the salmon monitoring. So yeah, definitely lots and lots to get involved with, whatever you're interested in, really.
I'd also shout out that regardless of wherever you are in the world, you can get involved by going online and helping us count shad. And in previous years, the camera data has taken quite a while to get on the website, but this year the system is all sorted so that footage is going to be on the website within days of it being recorded. So it's really, really useful to have as many people as possible counting for us online as well. So I'd really recommend giving it a go. It's really easy. If you work from home, you can fit it in for 5 minutes on a lunch break. Or if you're looking for a way to relax at the end of a long day, you can just spend 5 minutes at your computer counting shad.
Yeah, it's really relaxing, isn't it, to watch the water flowing and the fish swimming. And there is a leaderboard as well for anyone that likes a competitive element. So you can see if you can get on our leaderboard as well. Brilliant. I think that is all the questions that we've had sent in, Rachel. So thank you very much for those. And thanks to Rachel for delivering that talk this evening, and to Laura for providing the signing for us. So this was the final talk on our Severn series, the 7th and final talk. But we have made most of the talks available on our YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch those if you'd like to. There were talks all about the Unlocking the Severn project if you want to know more about us. We had a river health panel. Oh gosh, what else have we had? More about the migrations, fish migrations taking place on the River Severn. We had a riverfly talk by Rachel last week. So please do go back and watch those if you missed any of them, and I'll post a link to those shortly. After the event, I'll be sending out an email with a link to a survey that we'd be really grateful if you could take a few minutes just to fill that in for us, to tell us about your experience this evening. And within that email, as I've said, I will include all of the links to where you can find about the volunteering opportunities, how you can count the shad online as well, and just generally stay up to date with what we're doing on the Unlocking the Severn project. So that's all from us really this evening. If you would like to stay up to date with us, what we're doing on Unlocking the Severn, please feel free to follow us on social media. So we are on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram using the handle @SevernUnlocked, and on our website as well. You can also on any page sign up for our monthly newsletter, so you'll get a newsletter straight to your inbox each month, which tells you what's going on, gives you updates on the fish passes, lets you know about volunteering and events that we're running as well. So thanks again for joining us this evening. I'm just going to copy some links into the chat box for you. If I can find them. So there's some details about our social media if you'd like to keep updated on there. And I will also post the survey link as well. But as I said, we'll be emailing all of this out to attendees afterwards. But we'd be really grateful for your feedback from there. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll leave it there. Thanks again for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you out volunteering, counting shad by the river very soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.